Welcome to Whispers and Bricks. My name is Ari Schonbrun. I'm your host. My guest today is Anissa Orsino. She's always had a lust for life, but a bout with breast cancer at age 37, while she was pregnant with her second child back in 2014, made her even more passionate about living life to the fullest. In the years since she completed treatment, Anissa ran her first and only marathon, sailed the oceans on vessels ranging from catamarans to Disney cruises, and fulfilled a lifelong dream of hiking the Inca Trail in Peru and seeing Machu Picchu. In addition, Anissa and her family got rid of nearly everything they owned back in 2019 to travel full-time as a family. They world schooled their two young boys in Spain and the Dominican Republic before COVID-19 put their travel plans temporarily on hold. They are now living in a minimalist life in Las Vegas. Anissa believes that being diagnosed with breast cancer was a huge gift. It reminded her not to take her precious life for granted, taught her that she was never promised the 100 or so years on this planet that she'd always assumed she had, and connected her with a support system she hadn't realized surrounded her. Anissa's on a mission to teach our fellow moms and sister survivors that happiness is a choice, that life is for living, and that by implementing a few simple practices, we can all create lives that we love, no matter our circumstances. Anissa talks about living with intention and crafting a simple, efficient, and joyful life, both on her blog, Mama Goes Beyond, and her podcast, The Optimized Mom. Please help me welcome Anissa Orsino. Anissa, how are you today?
I am super. How are you?
I am awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. We're super excited to have you here.
Thrilled to be here.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, as you know, the name of this podcast is Whispers and Bricks. The
Yes.
whispers are those voices telling us what the right thing to do is, and they represent the good in life. And the bricks represent the bad things that we go through in life. Now, let's be real. Everybody gets hit with a brick during their lifetimes, whether it's one, whether it's many, whether they're small, whether they're big. But life is not a straight line. It's got ups and downs, and we're going to go through some tough times, and nobody is immune. Now, with you, it looks like things were kind of growing great for you when you were growing up. You have a master's in opera singing. You
I
spent
do.
you spent your 20s traveling the world singing opera. You decided to settle down and become a stay-at-home mom. I mean, this is nirvana. I mean, you
Yeah,
had it.
I
And
really did.
then you got hit with a brick called breast cancer at the
I
age of
did.
37. You were 34 weeks pregnant with your second child at the time. Tell us about that period of your life. How did you find out you had cancer? How did you treat it? What did you do? What was going on?
So I mean, as you said, I had a pretty great life. I always say if you asked me before May 12th, 2014, what the worst day of my life was, I would not have had an answer for you. I mean, I couldn't even come up with anything that was, pretty bad. I had a great life. Um, I had a 2-year-old at home, and was, as you said, 34 weeks pregnant. I was showering the one morning and noticed the lump. And, it's one of those kind of things you hear your breasts change when you're pregnant. I honestly, I so thought it was nothing that I almost didn't mention it at my next appointment with my OBGYN. And it was only, he was walking out the door. And I said, hey, I just, before you go, I noticed this lump. I'm sure it's nothing, but, would you just check it out for me? And thank goodness, because I know if I had not been pregnant, I would not have gone to the doctor for this, because for me, I'm not a person who gets cancer. I eat an organic diet. I make my own cleaning supplies. I don't use plastic, I don't use a microwave. If I heard it gave you cancer, I did not do it. So I just, I'm living the right life. I'm getting an A+ in life, and I will live to be 100 because that's how it works. This was honestly my philosophy. So he's walking out the door, and I said, I'm sure this is nothing. Will you just take a look at it for me? And he walked back in, checked the lump. He said, I'm not sure it's nothing. And that day he sent me downstairs in the same building was a breast imaging center. They did an ultrasound. They did a biopsy that day. And this, I think, was a Thursday. I waited over the weekend. And then on Monday, I got the call that I had to come in. And I knew when they were having me come in and weren't telling me over the phone, it was not good news.
Wow. Wow. So what happened? I mean, you're 34 weeks pregnant, and this huge, you get hit with this huge brick. What was your mood like? What was, what were you feeling?
I think it was just like terror was the first word that popped into my head, but overwhelm was the second one. My personality is such that I would not buy a vacuum cleaner without researching it for like a month and reading 1,000 reviews. And then you get thrown into this world where it's like, this is an emergency and everything has to happen right now. And you're making these decisions about who's going to be the doctor that does this and who's going to be the surgeon that does this. And do you want, this treatment or this treatment? And they're doing all these tests because when you're pregnant, of course, there are other things to consider. You're considering your unborn child as well. And so they were doing the sorts of tests where they would say, well, if this comes out that we think the cancer, we can't do the test we would normally do to see what stage your cancer is. But if we do this test and we think that your cancer has spread, we're just going to go ahead and let you carry your child to term because basically we can't do anything for you. Or if this test comes up negative, then you're having a C-section on Monday because then the baby will be 35 weeks and we need to get him out and get you started on treatment as soon as possible. And so it was just things every day. It was these kinds of things like, these major decisions that normally would take me months, you're doing just instantaneously or in a matter of hours. We were living in a 2-bedroom apartment. I remember going to see the oncologist and I said, am I going to be able to take care of my kids by myself? And he said, no. So then we had to move into a bigger apartment so that my parents thankfully could come up and move in with us. But it was like I was packing a box one Monday and trying to hurry up and pack it because I was about to have to go and have a C-section to, get my son born so that I could start chemo in 8 days. And it was just way too fast.
Wow. What was your husband thinking, feeling, how did this affect him?
My husband's superpower is that he is the guy who just, if everyone else is falling apart, he just picks it up. He looks around to see what needs to be done, and he just does it. And so he was great. He was in a tremendously challenging job at the time. He was the chief operating officer of his company. So he was still working full-time. He was still traveling, but he was coming with me to appointments and trying to make things normal for our 2-year-old and putting up with his in-laws being in the house all the time. But he's really, I have seen him, throughout our life together in lots of crises. And he's just one of those guys that's able to kind of compartmentalize it and grieve on his own time and be nervous in his own time, but he goes into like action mode. And so he was really kind of the ideal person to have with you when everything's falling apart like that.
Wow. Did you ever reach a point that like you hit rock bottom where you said to yourself, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I just give up. It's, I have 2 kids, my husband, he'll be able to take care of them. And, I'm done. I'm out. See you later.
No.
No. Wow. Wow. No,
I remember sitting on the couch one day and thinking, I bet this is what it feels like right before you die, because I was so sick. I remember just feeling miserable, but I used to I had a bracelet that I wore that I had engraved on the inside, failure is not an option. And I had, when I would sit at chemo, there's a song that I loved called This Is Why We Fight by a band called the Decemberists. And I used to just put it on repeat while I was sitting in chemo, and I would look at photos of the boys. And it was just like, at this point, if I had died at that time, um, I for sure, the littlest one would not have known me at all. But even the
Mhm.
2-year-old would probably have forgotten me. And it was just unacceptable. So my inner narrative the whole time was, you know, this needs to be beaten. This is not something that, that I can let knock me down, kind of thing. And I did some unfortunate Googling one night and saw a statistic that my stage and grade and type of breast cancer, where I was, the 5-year survival rate was 25%. So I knew that the odds were not super, but my philosophy about it was just that failure was not an option. I needed to beat it, and so yeah, so that's what I did.
Wow. Wow. So you were a fighter, obviously. That's
For
that's
sure.
truly that's truly amazing. I'm sure your kids are thrilled to death that mommy was a fighter. I'm sure your husband was thrilled to death that mommy was a fighter. Um,
But I will say that I did have to really fight for my attitude. You talk about hitting rock bottom. I do remember I was sick in the summer. And I remember getting really angry about that, other people were just out enjoying their summer and they were out at the beach and, going to the pool and all that kind of stuff. And I was, sick in bed. And that I really did have to cultivate this, like, okay, what can I be grateful for today that is good? Because I'm getting angry and miserable and mad at the world. Like, I'm mad enough at the world that I will beat this thing, but I
mhm.
don't want to be a miserable human being while I'm at it. And even when you're in the midst of that horrible circumstance, there was so much awesome stuff in my life to be grateful for when I looked for it, but I really had to look for it.
Wow. But so, I mean, even though you had to look for it, the issue is you found it. You
Yeah.
found the strength. You found, that inner strength that said, no, I am going to beat this. I am a nice person. I'm not going to be a miserable wretch, even though I feel like a miserable wretch. But I am not going to let this thing beat me, and I'm going to be there for them the same way that they're there for me. I mean, that is absolutely amazing. It's incredible.
Well, thanks. But
Wow.
I think we all have that capacity in us. I think, when you get in these situations, other people look at you like, wow, I could never do that. I think people do this kind of thing every day and respond with grace. I think it's more common that people respond that way than the other way. We all think we wouldn't behave that way, but I think a lot of people do. I've met a lot of sister survivors out in the world that really rose to the occasion, and lots of people who are dealing with worse things than I was dealing with that have come out,
Yeah.
sparkling. It's just a matter of making that choice to not be crushed by something.
Right. Well, again, one of the reasons I started Whispers and Bricks was because there are people out there that are going through different things, and they don't understand very often that there are other people out there going through the exact same things that they're going through. And they need to
Mhm.
know and they need to hear from people like you that no, you can't, I can beat this. And if I can beat this, you can beat this. You just need to gather the strength. And if you don't have the strength, guess what? Pick up a phone, email me, send me some, I will be there in your corner. All right.
Mhm.
And that's what gives people the strength to keep going. And again, that's why I started Whispers and Bricks, because I wanted to help these people and have them know that you're not alone.
Yeah, so
Just not
true.
alone. Right? Let me ask you this. Now you're cancer free, yes?
Well, we assume so. One of the things that I never realized before I had cancer, I thought, they give you the clean bill of health. The way they handle it is I go periodically, I get blood work done. If they see something that looks, unnerving, they would do scans, but they call it no evidence of disease. And so I figure no news is good news. At this point, I'm 8 years out, and the type of cancer that I had often recurs in the first 5 years but rarely recurs after that. So I am
Oh,
I'm I'm saying I'm feeling pretty good about it.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, let me ask you this. Who's the one person that you would point to say that you would say had the most influence in your life and why?
So this is a really hard one. I knew you were going to ask this question, and I feel like at different points in my life, if you had asked me, you know, different times, I would have answered differently. As a kid, it was for sure my parents were,
Hmm.
huge mentors. When I was singing, it was whoever my singing teacher was at the time. Was I was working so closely with that person one on one for career guidance and that sort of thing. That was huge. When I was sick, and a resource I would love to point out to anyone who is dealing with any kind of cancer. Um, and now, for some reason, the book just flew out of my head. I'm going to add it to you for the show notes, but there's a lady by the name of Dr. Kelly Turner who wrote this wonderful book that was all about people who had been diagnosed with what was said to be incurable cancer. And it was called Radical Remission. Radical Remission is the name of the book. Dr. Kelly Turner. She collected stories of people that had been told, basically sent home to die, that had been diagnosed with cancer. Doctors said they could do nothing for them, and they recovered. And she looked for links among their stories to see what people did to get better, and then wrote this book with sort of the steps. And one of the big things that I took away from that was how important attitude and how important community is in healing yourself. And so when I felt like I needed to dig in, that was what really got me started thinking, this practicing gratitude is really important. Connecting with other people that can make me laugh and that, I can help and they can help me. This is really important. And so that was a really big one at that time.
Hmm.
But we're so fortunate to live in the 21st century, and we have mentors everywhere. I mean, I can go everywhere from like Marcus Aurelius to Eleanor Roosevelt to now I'm in this great coaching program with a gentleman by the name of Brian Johnson, who's a great mentor, and it's a great time to be alive.
Wow. That's again absolutely incredible. Let me ask you before we go, do you have any words of wisdom for my audience? Something my audience can take away from this conversation? Um, Anything at all?
I would say, this is your life, this moment right now. Start living it on purpose. Don't wait for the brick to come and smack you in the face. I mean, you will feel this way after it happens. I mean, Ari is living proof. I am living proof that your perspective changes once you've been through one of these life altering sort of events. But you don't have to wait for that. You can look around right now. Stop putting off living for another time. Stop thinking there's going to be some point in the future where, life is magically simpler and everything is magically better and things get good. I like to ask myself in the morning, what's going great in my life right now? Because there's always something, even when you are sick, even you're bald and you've got a baby next to you, and you're in the middle of chemotherapy. There's still something to be grateful about. What do I need right now, or what needs work right now? And what is my first step to go get it? And get yourself out of, wallowing in it mode, my life is horrible, and into here's what's good, here's what needs work, and here's how I'm going to fix it. This is the next step. And I think it just takes you out of that mopey sort of mode that we all can get into where things feel hopeless.
Wow. Great, great words of advice. Now, if people want to get in touch with you, what would be the best way for them to do that? Do you have like a website? Do you have an email? What's your story? What's the best way to
I
get
do.
into hold of you?
So my website is mamagoesbeyond.com. And my email is mama@mamagoesbeyond.com. I'm on all the socials at Mama Goes Beyond. So that's really the best way to find me. I'm not on social media a ton because I'm consciously kind of pulling back from that a bit, but I do have profiles there. I do check in from time to time, and if it might take a few days, but you can't find me there.
Uh-huh. That's great. Anissa, Thanks so much for sharing your story with my audience. I want to wish you all the best luck going forward. Your sons, your husband, they have an incredible wife and mother that that just loves them. I mean, it just oozes from you, and you have this happiness, a life happiness type of situation going through you that is contagious, infectious. I mean, your smile, your laugh. You are an amazing individual, and you are giving a lot of hope to a lot of people. Certainly to my audience, certainly to me. You are one of my heroes. That you've done all the things that you've done, and I wish you the best of luck going forward. Thanks so much for coming on the program. And you've been listening to Whispers and Bricks, and I'm your host, Ari Schonbrun. Remember, if you feel like you're stuck in the mud, like you're spinning your wheels, wasting time in your career, your business, your life, you're not enjoying all the success, satisfaction, and significance that you desire, then it's time for you to book a call with me at www.callwithari.com. Check out my Whispers and Bricks Coaching Academy. And until next time, listen to the whispers, avoid the bricks, and never, ever give up on your dreams. Bye for now.